Night shifts are supposed to be quiet. That's the entire reason security companies hire overnight guards in the first place. Businesses close, employees go home, and buildings sit empty until morning. You get used to the quiet hum of electronics, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights above your desk. I've worked security jobs for several years now. Office buildings, parking garages, construction sites, and warehouses. Most shifts blur together after a while. Long nights, cold coffee, and the quiet glow of security monitors lighting up a dark room. Sometimes the hours pass so slowly that you find yourself checking the clock every few minutes. Other times you get so used to the silence that you almost forget you're alone inside a massive empty building. But there was one shift at a warehouse outside Indianapolis, Indiana, that I'll probably never forget. Because that night I realized I wasn't the only person inside that building, and whatever was there with me didn't want to be found. This happened about 2 years ago when I started working overnight security for a logistics company. The building was a massive shipping warehouse located on the outskirts of the city. It sat near an industrial road where trucks passed during the day, but almost no one drove at night. From the outside, it looked like any other industrial building. A huge gray structure surrounded by a chain-link fence and a wide, mostly empty parking lot. Tall security lights stood around the perimeter, casting pale yellow light across the asphalt. At night, the wind would sometimes push trash or loose paper across the empty lot, making faint scraping sounds against the pavement. Sometimes plastic bags would drift slowly across the ground like ghosts moving through the light. The whole place always felt strangely isolated, but once you stepped inside, the place felt enormous. Rows of tall metal racks stretched across the warehouse floor like a maze, each rack stacked with pallets, freight containers, and boxes waiting to be shipped across the country. Some boxes were small, others were large enough to hide a person inside. Large loading dock doors lined the back wall where trucks would arrive during the day. Forklifts were parked neatly along the edges of the aisles. Even when they were turned off, they gave the building a strange mechanical presence. During the daytime, the building was busy, workers shouting to each other across the warehouse, machines humming constantly, trucks backing into loading bays, forklifts moving quickly between the aisles. The place felt alive, but once night came, everything shut down. By the time my shift started at 10 p.m., every worker had gone home. The machines were silent, the lights were dimmed, and the building became completely empty, except for me. My job was simple. Watch the security cameras, walk through the building once every hour, make sure all doors stayed locked, and if anything suspicious happened, call the police. Most nights were uneventful. Sometimes the building made strange noises, metal shelves creaking, pipes ticking inside the walls, the faint hum of refrigeration units somewhere in the distance. Occasionally the wind outside would rattle one of the loading dock doors slightly. But after a few weeks you get used to those sounds. Your brain learns which noises are normal, which ones belong to the building. At least, that's what I thought. Until that night. A normal start. That night started like any other shift. I arrived around 9:50 p.m., signed the logbook, and grabbed the keys from the day supervisor. He gave me a quick rundown of the shift like usual. "Nothing special tonight," he said while putting on his jacket. Then he walked out the door. Once he left, the building became completely silent. His truck headlights disappeared down the road, leaving the warehouse sitting alone in the darkness. For a moment, I stood near the front entrance listening to the quiet. The kind of quiet you only hear late at night. I did my usual patrol through the building. All doors were locked, the parking lot was empty. Nothing unusual. The warehouse aisles were quiet except for the faint echo of my footsteps. The sound traveled strangely through the building. Sometimes it felt like the echoes came back from directions they shouldn't. After finishing the patrol, I returned to the security office near the front entrance. The room had a desk, a chair, a coffee machine, and a wall of monitors showing camera feeds from around the building. 16 cameras in total. Some pointed at entrances, others watched the warehouse aisles. A few monitored the loading docks outside. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down in front of the monitors. For the first few hours, nothing happened. Around midnight, I did another patrol. Still nothing. Just the quiet emptiness of the building. When I returned to the office, I poured another cup of coffee and sat down in front of the monitors again. That's when things started to feel strange. It was around 1:17 a.m. when one of the screens flickered. Camera 14, the one pointed toward the rear loading docks. At first I thought it was just a small connection glitch. Sometimes the cameras would flicker for a second before stabilizing again. Old wiring in big buildings can do that. But then I saw something move across the screen. A shadow. It passed quickly across the floor near one of the loading dock doors, like someone had just walked past the camera. I leaned forward in my chair. The loading dock area looked empty again. No open doors, no trucks outside. I checked the alarm system. Everything was still armed, which meant no doors had been opened. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just seen someone walk across that camera. And the thing about security work is simple. If something feels wrong, you check it. So I grabbed my flashlight and decided to check it out. Walking through that warehouse at night always felt strange. Most of the lights were turned off to save electricity, leaving only dim emergency lights along the walls. Long shadows stretched across the aisles. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness as I walked between the shelves. Each step echoed across the concrete floor. The deeper I walked into the building, the quieter everything felt. Eventually, I reached the loading dock area where the camera had shown the shadow. I checked every door carefully. Locked. No signs of forced entry, no vehicles outside. For a moment I thought maybe the camera had glitched, maybe I imagined the shadow. I turned around to head back toward the office, and that's when I heard it. Footsteps, right behind me. It was there. I spun around immediately. My flashlight beam swept across the warehouse floor. Nothing, just rows of metal shelves fading into darkness. For a few seconds I stood completely still, listening. The silence returned. Then suddenly, clang. The sharp sound of metal hitting the floor echoed somewhere deeper in the warehouse. My heart immediately started racing, because that noise definitely didn't come from the building settling. It sounded like someone had dropped something. And the sound came from aisle 7, which was nowhere near where I was standing. I slowly walked toward aisle 7. Every step felt heavier than the last. The flashlight beam shook slightly in my hand. When I reached the aisle, I noticed something lying on the floor. A metal wrench, right in the middle of the aisle. But the thing that made my stomach drop was that the wrench was still spinning, slowly turning on the concrete floor, like it had just been dropped seconds earlier, which meant someone had been standing there moments before I arrived, and they were probably still somewhere nearby. That's when I grabbed my radio. I think someone might be inside the building. They told me to stay calm and said they were sending police. But before I could say anything else, I heard something. Not mine, someone else's. Slow, heavy, coming from somewhere behind the shelves. Someone was standing nearby, watching me. I slowly raised my flashlight toward the darkness between the racks. At first I didn't see anything. Then something moved. A figure, standing between the shelves about 20 feet away. The person wasn't moving. They were just standing there, watching me. The flashlight barely lit their face, but I could tell they were staring directly at me. And the worst part, I had no idea how long they had been standing there. Neither of us moved for several seconds. Then the figure slowly stepped backward, disappearing deeper into the darkness between the shelves. That was enough for me. I turned and started walking quickly back toward the security office. But after only a few steps, I heard footsteps again. This time faster. Somewhere behind me. Like whoever was in the warehouse had started following me. That's when I stopped walking and started running. I made it back to the security office and locked the door. About 10 minutes later, the police arrived. They searched the entire warehouse, every aisle, every office, every loading dock, but they found nothing. No person, no broken doors, no open windows, nothing. According to the alarm system, no one had entered or exited the building all night. I quit that job about a week later, but before I left, I checked the footage one last time. Right before the camera feed went dark, there was a single frame, just one, where you could barely see someone standing near the loading dock door, standing perfectly still, looking directly at the camera, and the timestamp showed something that still doesn't make sense. That frame was recorded before my shift even started, which means whatever I saw inside that warehouse that night might have already been there, waiting, long before I arrived, and maybe it never left.